tips for peak performance without burnout. From today, we are interviewing Miss Leonie Percy. She's our magnetic mama all the way in Australia. Hi, Leonie.
Hello. Hello. I'm actually English, living in Australia, so it's even more global. There you go.
That's awesome.
All continents in this conversation.
Yes, yes. And what I love about it is that you're a yogi through and through, and you've really transformed not only your online presence as life has continued for you, but you've empowered so many women. And today we're going to shout out a lot of the ladies and teach you a little bit about how you can live through the phases of life. All of our listeners are at different phases, and I don't have any kids particularly, but there's other people out there that do, and just kind of building the mindset and future pacing what life looks like with peak performance, because we're having, a lot of different things competing for our time and our energy, and how do we blend all of that together? And that's what you're specialized in, right, Leonie?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we were just having a fab conversation just before we hit record, and it was very much about the millennials. You guys are very much in your maiden energy right now, which is, freedom and wonder and discovering who you are and traveling the world. And I traveled the world for 10 years. I just kept going round and round and round. It was just the best time ever. And then you go into the mother energy. You biologically have your children, or you're just mothering pets and your community and your family. And there's a whole dynamic that changes there. And then you become what I see as the mentor, or the mindful maven. So maven is a cool name for kind of guru. Where you become a teacher, and you're really out there teaching your kids or teaching your communities your wisdom. And then you go into the mystic, and the mystic is really being authentically you, not giving a shit about what anyone thinks, and really being in your power. So it's kind of really beautiful. I'm in my 40s. I'm too old to be a millennial now, but I'd love to have known this in my 20s, and knowing that we go through these phases, and that they're all everything is divine timing and everything is meant to flow as it does. But just knowing that this is how the life cycle works as women, I think it's really empowering.
Yes. And, we'll see that, and our audience will see that. I have so many beautiful, powerful women just sharing their knowledge, and they're not millennials, but me as the driven millennial and representing us, it's so beautiful to just kind of put you guys on and say, what did you wish you knew before baby number 1, let alone baby number 3? How did that evolve for you, and what fears came up, and what did you have to seriously sort through? Not that you listening aren't going to sort through your own set of issues, but that when we have that powerful intention to say, let me have a kind of an idea what kind of transitions I'm going to go through, and what it means to really say goodbye to the part of me that is really wild. I mean, there was one point in my life I was in over 12 countries in 8 months. It was nuts. I was never home. I was, and that's part of that journey. And I'm kind of still in my wild fun phase, but there's those hopes. And
my wild woman is raging, right?
Yeah. And so you still have that. And so, I mean, you could probably come out with me and my friends and you'd be a blast, So that's where I just want to empower my audience that age is not a thing in this whole context, and spirit will guide you and show you so many different things. So whoever this is resonating with, whether you have little kiddos now, or you're not even thinking about that, or you're single and you're truly having lots of fun, or if we have people who are millennials and divorced, right? So there's those components, and there's those life things that are happening. And so what we want to talk about today is fear, and how that kind of plays into a lot of our relationships, and how we handle those transitions, so that we can maintain a peak performance when fear arises. Can you tell me a little bit more about your journey with fear?
Absolutely. I've always been, I think, quite fearless. When I was traveling around the world, I would just do crazy stuff. I just was I'll jump off that mountain, or skydive naked. No, I didn't do that, but I wanted to. Just be really kind of wild and free. And so there's definitely that part of me that still exists very strongly now. Because as we go through our maiden phase and we maybe become mothers. And I've been a mother for 10 years. I have a 10-year-old, a 4-year-old, and my little baby is 1 next week. And we do lose sense of that maiden energy when we become mothers, right? Because it's very overwhelming and it's such a huge responsibility. And we don't want to lose that. We want to stay in that energy. We want to, you know, still be very in tune with our spontaneous woman who loves to just be free. But fear plays such a crippling place in our lives, right? Because, you know, your mind is your best friend or your worst enemy. So I discovered this when I went through a divorce with my first husband, and I became a yoga teacher after that, because yoga for me was my savior, right? I'd go to yoga and I'd cry and I would just break down on the mat, but I just saw the light, and it really healed my broken heart. I was a single mum for 3 years. I wrote my book, Mother On, which has gone on to help so many other mums. And then, of course, I meet my husband now on Tinder, right? Yeah, I know. It was like one date in 3 years on Tinder. And now we have 2 more beautiful children together. And, you know, this is life. It's glorious and it's awful at the same time, you know, like it's just life. And fear plays such a big part of that. Because if we're tuning in and being dominated by the fear that's in our head, then it's not going to allow us to become this true version of who we are. So if you're not feeling joy and bliss, you're living in fear, right? Like
That's so true.
true.
Yeah. And I wanted that to like hit home, because maybe you don't even have, some people unknowingly have such a good relationship with fear that they don't even realize, and this is just an example, there's tons of other alternatives, but that the joy and the bliss, you have to build a relationship with that equally. And blissful situations are going to change as you go through the phases of life, but circling back and saying, what does joy mean? What does fear mean? I went to a retreat like a year ago, and they redefined what joy meant. And I always thought joy was like the wild woman, like, woo, like I'm super joyful. Like I think about the like Inside Out movie.
Yeah, we love that movie. It's the best movie.
Yeah.
Really. Yeah.
And then someone told me it was more about like peace, and it was more about this like this over, like in my yoga practice, like I, you know, when we go into Shavasana, I'm laying under a tree and like I'm super peaceful. And I never thought like, oh, that could be me being joyful too. And so, you know, what's joy and peace mean to you?
Absolutely, absolutely. I've worked with a lot of women and mainly moms, and I would teach them to find joy again. And a lot of them were like, I don't know what that is. I know what happiness feels like, but joy is such a great, the sweetness of your emotions. And you could be walking down the road and you just suddenly feel joy. There's no particular reason for this, right? It could be it's a sunny day and the birds are singing and you feel super grateful for your life, but there's no particular reason why you feel this way. So finding joy and really knowing what brings you joy is such a huge part of surrendering into the infinite and being in full trust of your life. So for me right now, joy is making earrings, right? I have just been loving using clay, and I've made these ones. And for me, it's like I sit at my little craft table and I kind of tune in and channel these beautiful earrings. And that is joyful for me. And I think it changes, you know, like you may paint, you may knit, you may do anything that is creative, but joyfulness, it's not something you can like strive for, you know, like it's like happiness is a state of being, right? Like we do all the things because we think it's going to make us happy. That's not true. You can have the house, the car, the job. I had all of it, the job, the marriage, you know, it was perfect. And then it fell apart, right? And now it's like, I don't care about all the things. I just care about finding joy in the moment because it's with my kids. It's being with my husband, you know, it's just being really grateful and in a space of radical acceptance. That is joyful.
I love radical acceptance. I think because when we touch base with what is freaking us out and what's scaring us, we forget that no matter how scared we are or how out of control we feel, you have to accept what's going on.
Yeah.
And that's where, you know, yoga and breath and that union between body and self, and how like yoga has taught me even, you know, I have to accept what's going on, you know, and it's not going to be pristine every single time. You know, like errors happen, people make mistakes. But for me to be scared about what's going wrong, like, is almost, it's a waste of brain power.
Yeah.
And it hinders your peak performance in that sense, because if I can show up, and not saying it's an emotion, right? So it's not something that I can, like, I'm not perfect at it. And like my close people will tell you that it's not like, I still want to control it all, and I'm, you know, fearful of things at times. But when you have that radical acceptance and you take a breath and you say, like, what is truly going on and what's worst case scenario, you're able to see more of what is that you are just scared of something.
And it's not real. Like, fear is a complete illusion. It's not real. Okay. So, you know, when my kids are having a nightmare or they're having a stressful thought, it's like, you know, I know it feels really real right now, but it's not real. Okay. It hasn't happened yet. And what yoga taught me very much is, when I was going through my divorce, which was incredibly stressful and painful, if I was in the past playing the victim, why did it happen? You know, I didn't do anything wrong. Or if I was projecting into the future and feeling very anxious about that, then I wasn't present. And when you're in the present moment, that's where joy lives. And you know, Brené Brown, and you go watch Oprah, and you go listen to all of these soulful conversations, they will all tell you that, you know, joyfulness is in the present moment. You cannot have fear in the present moment, because joy and fear cannot live in the same space. So when you're worrying about the past and when you're anxious about the future, you're living in fear. And it's being really mindful of that and saying, you know what, you know, it's very easy to go down that rabbit hole, right? And conjure up this entire story of something that might happen. It's very unlikely to happen, but your brain is so powerful, and your mind is really telling you a story all the time. And you have a choice to go, ego, not listening to you today, you know, and kind of be quite playful with it and be like, nah. You know, you can completely be in control of what you're thinking, which of course affects your feelings, you know. So I had this beautiful massage yesterday, and it had like a little card on the pillow, and it basically says, all that we are is the result of what we have thought. And that's Buddha. And I loved it, and I kept it, and I'm going to put it with my little shrine over here. It's so true. Like, we create everything from our thoughts.
Yeah, and that's so conspicuous that you got that, and that's the message we're teaching today. Like, we were talking about fearlessness, because it starts with that, and fears in your head. I mean, you could be really, really scared. Like, it's an example is, there's like snakes, right? Like, there's mythology and this whole background that like snakes are this bad, ominous thing, you know. But then you hear the flip side of the philosophy, and there's a whole bunch of people that have talked about how snakes are actually transformative, and like in the Bible, like the snake triggered this whole movement of change that happened. Or when this happens, and you start to kind of build your own mindset with that, and saying, I'm not just going to accept the external label, but I'm going to choose my own. And I'm going to choose my own as a single girl, as somebody trying to become a mother, as someone who's been a mother, and all those constantly kind of shift and change.
Oh, snake is your Kundalini energy, right? Like, that's it, at the base of your spine. And that's really powerful. So yeah, it's all about perception, and it's all about mindset. And you can have obviously a growth mindset, and you can turn adversity into opportunity, like I did after my divorce. You know, I became a yoga teacher. I taught kids, mums, and families for 5 years, and I just radiated out love. And that totally changed my life, and it's changed many other people's lives that I've ended up mentoring. And that, to me, is the power of yoga, and the power of being able to not play the victim to your fears. And the last 18 months, I've been being trained as an intuitive guide, where we really go into the subconscious basement of our clients' minds, and we actually radically return them back to wholeness and back to love. And, you know, so much of our life is because we are stuck in these shadow archetypes in our mind. Like, we make decisions all the time based on fear. They're not based on love. And our energy is totally creating our life. So if we're high vibing and we're feeling really joyful, and we're, you know, even if there's chaos, right, all around us, we can use practices like heart coherence or radical gratitude, or even just doing, you know, deep breaths and some sort of meditation to elevate us above that chaos. And our whole world just becomes very magical and very effortless, because the low vibing energy of fear, which sits in the lower chakras, the base, the solar, and the sacral chakra, right? Like, that's what we're going to manifest more of if we're in that energy, right? The guy that doesn't work out, the job that's, you know, sucking your soul, the friendships that you have that don't serve you, like, that's just going to continue to manifest until you change your energy and vibration. Like, I wish I'd known that 20 years ago. I really do.
And those are the tools. So thank you for sharing them. And that's, you know, today is all about fear and being a fearless woman, but then also just saying these are the phases of life, and let me acknowledge when I'm having those fearful moments, and saying screw you to the ego sometimes. You know, and then I'm very excited to be a mystic someday, because I can't wait to just say,
you are a mystic.
I don't care.
This is the thing. We're actually all of these things at the same time, but we're obviously dominated by one archetypal energy. So right now, the millennials are typically maidens going into their mother phase, and motherhood cracks you open and is very often the beginning of a spiritual journey for many women. And that leads them into this kind of mentor, teacher, soul searching phase, and then they become the mystic. But you can be a mystic when you're in your 20s, right? Like, you don't need to be through pain or trauma. You can be totally awakened through bliss as well. It's just that most people are awakened through, you know, with yoga, it's like anger management or like a physical injury, right?
Yes, it's very true. For me, it was both, but I love that. And so the earrings you're wearing are some of your chakra earrings. So if any of our listeners feel like they know where their fear is seated in, how to overcome it, and they could use those, you know, daily reminders. What's really cool about Leonie's site and her magnetism as a mama is that she's doing weekly calls. So it's Wednesday night in Australia, which puts us sometime on Tuesday here in the US. But through her Facebook, which we're going to link to you all, you're able to get one of those sessions, and then you get some discounts on earrings by just kind of talking with her and connecting. So we hope you all take advantage of that. And Leonie, it was such a pleasure to interview you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, my pleasure. I've actually got a podcast called Magnetic Mama, and I actually have like over half my listeners are in America, which I think is so cool. So Magnetic Mama is on iTunes, and you can go download juicy episodes where I talk about all of these things. So yeah, check out my website, leoniepercy.com. And yeah, it would be my honor to serve you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Leonie, and we'll chat soon.
Ciao.